I feel a sense of deja vu about Prince Harry's ongoing claim against the Home Office to challenge the decision to reduce his automatic security protection when he visits the UK. And if I could ask you for one small favour, please hit that subscribe button. I would love to reach 500,000 subscribers. I'm very dedicated to this channel and helping you understand law. I'd love to reach 1 million subscribers, but let's get to 500,000 first. About 70% of you that watch regularly, out of millions of you that watch, don't subscribe. So please do that. I'd be really grateful. And now let's get back to the video. Because once again, the headlines are filled with things such like Harry is continuing to fight in the legal battle, his appeal continues, and he's lost his initial bid or his initial attempt to appeal, all of which, with respect to everybody watching, may confuse some people as to what on earth is going on. So in the United Kingdom, particularly for our international viewers here, we have multiple ways of trying to appeal a decision. I've looked at this in other videos. I'll go over that in a minute. The short version of this, for those that want to get on with your day, is that Harry has lost his initial attempt to appeal this decision. So the judge described, so I read in the newspapers, the judge described his claim as frankly hopeless in some parts of it. So he's lost his initial permission to appeal. Because as I've explained previously, you need permission to appeal a decision. It's not an automatic right, save for very few cases. For example, criminal cases that are appealing from the magistrate's court to the Crown Court and so on. But in this case, Harry very much would have needed permission to appeal this decision, the refusal of his judicial review of the decision to reduce his security protection. So how do we do that? Well, as I've explained in previous videos, you can either seek permission to appeal from the initial judge that made the decision, which is in most cases not going to be successful, because if you think that the judge has just heard all the evidence, they've heard all the arguments, they are not likely unless there has been a procedural irregularity that has occurred, which may be no fault of the judge, or there's a question of law or a point of law or something like that that is no fault of the judge again, or there's, for some reason, there's been new evidence, fresh evidence that couldn't have been obtained with reasonable diligence the first time round, and then the judge says, well, yes, maybe that would change the decision because that's perfectly fine. It's a bit like when we give advice as a barrister. If someone then, after we've given the advice, comes and says, well, what about this? Does that change anything? And we might say, well, yes, that turns the whole thing on its head. So in some cases, that might be the case. But in most cases, it's not the case. And I even called it. If I bring in another browser here and share the screen, I called my prediction that Harry's permission to appeal was going to be refused. This is over on Black Belt Secrets. So if you're not subscribed there, please do jump over and subscribe. We've burst through 100,000. We're at 120,000 subscribers now. You get my personal views and my personal predictions over on there. Some people get confused as to why I'm giving personal views, but that's where I do them. If you want my personal views, that's where you go. Here on Black Belt Barrister, please do subscribe here as well. You get, I hope, the bare facts, and I hope to explain it very simply. But here's what I said previously. Either way, there needs to be a compelling reason or a real prospect that the appeal is going to succeed. And ordinarily, there would need to be something along the lines of fresh evidence that could not, with reasonable diligence, have been obtained the first time round. So if you don't have anything like that, there is no point of law that is in question, there's no procedural error that is in question, which is highly unlikely given that this was a high-profile case in the High Court. There is almost no chance of permission to appeal in cases like that. And even if you do get permission to appeal, which I don't think Harry will, and it goes to appeal, then it's unlikely to succeed in the vast majority of cases, because in the vast majority of cases, they've been heard properly the first time round. And so my prediction was, which has now been borne out, that Harry would get refused permission, at least at this stage, if not, again, reiterated by the Court of Appeal. And that is what the headlines are about yesterday and today. So you get your first shot, so to speak, with the judge that heard the case the first time round. You can seek permission from that judge, and you can renew your application for permission to appeal to the appellate court. And so that is Harry battling on. And speaking of battling on, the costs will battle on as well, because you've probably read either on X or somewhere else, wherever you loiter, you'll have read that Harry has had some reduction in costs. It wasn't a reduction in costs based on a point of issue analysis of those costs. What that would mean, which it wasn't, but what that would mean is the judge would take each and every issue, every point of dispute that was between the parties, and whether they succeeded on that point or not, and then allocate the proportion of costs that have been used arguing that particular issue, which is why sometimes we might advise, if you've got a particularly weak point in your statement of case, we might advise that you drop that point. Because if there's a huge amount of cost wasted both on your side and on the opponent's side, arguing over that one point, which had no merit of success, obviously that's a waste of court time, it's a waste of costs, and you may even get punished for arguing a very weak point. That would be a point per point or issue by issue exercise of cost analysis. Which issues were argued, which ones succeeded, which ones failed, and therefore which party should pay for which costs. This was not that, because the judge really said that this case was comprehensively lost, as I read. I haven't read the actual refusal documents. I'm reading it from the newspapers. I have seen the cost order, which summarizes is many pages, but summarizes the reduction in costs that Harry is liable for by only 10%. His lawyers were arguing that his cost liability to the other side should be reduced by at least 50% because there were some procedural errors by the Home Office in disclosure. I won't go into that in this video. You'll find that document linked online. It's a public document. You can go and read it. If I remember, I'll link it below. If I forget, remind me, and then I'll link it below because I forget these things. But there was a great level of detail of analysis as to why there's any reduction at all. But it's just an overall reduction of 10%. But speaking of those costs, they are likely to be in the region of £500,000, obviously then taking into account the reduction. Now, we know what the Home Office costs were because of a Freedom of Information request a few weeks ago. We don't know what Harry's costs are, but they are likely to be similar, if not more. So the grand bill is going to be something in the region of £1 million. And that is even at this point irrespective of a subsequent challenge on appeal. Obviously, there's going to be more costs incurred there. Just to round off, for those of you that didn't see the previous videos, for any appeal to be successful, even on a first appeal, the test for appeal is that there must be either a real prospect of success of the case being appealed or some other compelling reason for it to be heard. And so I'd suggested that neither of those are likely in this case. That is now been shown to be true by this first stage of refusal, and we will see what happens. But as I said, a sense of deja vu, headlines filled again with Harry is battling on. I think at some stage it would be sensible to just realize that this is not going to be successful. But nonetheless, Prince Harry is battling on. So say the headlines. If you found this brief update and summary for you useful, please do consider subscribing. That's how I know my channel is growing to reach a wider audience. Thank you for your time. I'll see you next time.